Hey, what is up guys, I'm Tech, and today we're going to be going over the Canon 50mm lens, and we're going to be going over to see if this lens is still worth it in 2020. So we're going to test the sharpness, we're going to test the build quality, and pretty much anything else that you would want to know before buying a lens. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. This is the Canon EF 50mm f1.8 STM lens, also well known as a 50 nifty, and like I said, today I'm going to be taking a look and see if this lens is any worth it and if you guys should buy it. So who is this lens really for? Well, honestly, if you're currently shooting with the kit lens and you are trying to upgrade to something better without breaking the bank, I think this is the right lens that you should get, because this lens only retails for about $120. So for that amount, I think you are getting a lot. And if you're coming from the kit lens, you're gonna notice a huge difference in terms of sharpness, but I'll get into that in a little while. The manual focus ring is surprisingly smooth. This was something big for me because I almost never use autofocus. I always use manual focus, so it is nice to see that this lens manual focus ring is pretty smooth when pulling focus. You can use a manual focus or you can use the autofocus, but the reason why I never use autofocus is because I use a Panasonic camera, specifically the Lumix G7, and if you guys already know, Panasonic cameras suck when it comes to the autofocus, so that's mainly the reason why I don't use autofocus on this lens. But it is nice to have the option to use manual focus or autofocus, because if you have a camera with pretty good autofocus like a Canon or Sony, you will be able to use this lens in autofocus mode, which a lot of people do prefer to shoot in autofocus. Since this lens has an EF mount, I have to use a speed booster to adapt the EF lenses to a micro four thirds mount. And the speed booster that I use is the Veltrox M2 Mark II. This reduces the crop factor on the G7 when shooting in 4K, so it reduces it by 0.71. And not only that, but by using a speed booster, it also gives you an extra stop of aperture. So this 50mm lens has a maximum aperture of 1.8. When using the speed booster, it turns the 1.8 aperture to a 1.3. which is really good if you want to create the bokeh effect on your photos or videos. Now let's talk about the most important thing on this lens, and that is how good is the sharpness. And surprisingly, this is by far the sharpest lens that I've ever seen under this price range. The photos and videos that you get out of this lens are nice and sharp with a great amount of contrast, and overall I am very happy by the results that you get from this lens. My main lens is the Sigma 18-35, and honestly they are both pretty sharp, but obviously the Sigma 18-35 is way sharper. But also you do have to keep that in mind that the Sigma 18-35 is a $800 lens, but for the price that you're getting the 50mm lens, I do have to say that this lens is pretty worth it, especially if you're coming from the kit lens. This is definitely going to be a huge upgrade, like I said earlier. Alright guys, so now let's talk about the build quality. So since this lens is under $150, you are getting a little bit of a poor build quality. So this lens does feel a bit cheap. The plastic, as you can hear, yeah, it feels a bit cheap, especially when coming from my Sigma 18-35. The Sigma 18-35 just feels like a tank compared to this lens. But you also have to keep in mind that the Sigma lens that I'm using is a $800 lens versus a $120 lens. So if you take good care of your gear, then you should be fine with this build quality. But yeah, I just want to get that out of the way. But yeah guys, overall a very great lens, and I highly recommend for you guys to pick one of these up. You guys, I think every videographer and photographer, no matter what level you are in, you should always have one of these in your camera bag, because these things come in very handy, especially if you want some tighter shots with this. So I use this lens whenever I want to get tighter shots, because my Sigma only goes to 35, but with this I'll get more close-up shots with this. So yeah, I highly recommend this. I always take this with me on pretty much any shoot. So yeah guys, that's gonna do it for this video. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like. Also, let me know down below in the comments if you guys have any questions about this lens, or really any type of questions that you guys may have. But that's gonna do it for this video guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. Peace.